I will now go ahead and transform this into more interesting design, so you can see right away here how you can change the scene into something more intricate, more interesting, with a little bit different mood and lighting. And you can use it as a tutorial if you wish. Of course, I will go a little bit faster right now because you already know all of these concepts. There will be nothing new to learn, basically. So I will allow myself to go a little bit faster. But right here in the video player, there's an option to control the speed. So you can do that and follow, even if this is literally first time for you having Blender open. So let's now go ahead and modify this a little bit. I will select the background and make it a little bit darker here, and maybe a little bit violet like this. And now I will move the camera further back, so I will change that orthographic scale to something like 17, so we have more space to play with, and press G then Z and move it up a little bit because I want to create some more objects around here. And let me just select the background and scale it up using S like this. And now I want to create like a soy sauce bottle right here next to the plate. So I will shift right click to move the cursor, press shift A to add a plane, tab into the edit mode, scale it down a little bit, and now press E to extrude. And you can see I'm doing this in render preview and it all works just fine. But in case your GPU doesn't allow you to do this in real time, just switch to the material preview or even solid view, doesn't really matter. So I will press I to inset. And again, this is the same thing that we did with the plate, and I will extrude this using E and then do one more extrusion like this. There will be one new command that you will learn right now, and that's creating new cuts with Ctrl R. So I'll press Ctrl R and place a cut here and just move it up. And I will do another one here with Ctrl R, place it down. And now I will go for face select, Alt click this loop and press Alt E and extrude face along normals. Press S for that even scaling and push this inside. So again, nothing new here. And now I'll press I for inset, but I will press it once again and they'll allow me to inset these faces individually like this. And now I'll Alt click the top loop, press Alt E again and extrude along normals. Press S and create a shape like this. And now I will create a new material here and make it darker. And now I'll enable X-ray view. Look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad and just select all of these here in the middle, including this one, and hold shift and select these on top. And create a new material slot. And new material, let's add some red color here and click assign. And now I will disable the X-ray view and just select by holding shift these around and add one last material here, something yellow, and hit assign. Maybe a little bit brighter like this, and then I will extrude this down to give this some more detail and tab out. So now if I go back to the camera view, I have completely new object in the scene, and I can press G then shift Z to lock it on X and Y axis and move it around like this. Now I want to shift right click here to move the cursor and press shift A and create another plane. Tab into the edit mode, press S to scale it up, and it will be another smaller plate. And I'll press E to extrude, and I will tab out and shift right click to move the cursor on top. And basically I want to create like a spring rolls right here, so press shift A and add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode, press S to scale it down, then S then Y to scale on the Y axis, and E to extrude. So you can see these are the same operations all over again to create all of these different objects. And now I'll select the face right here, enable X-ray view, hold shift, select the one in the back, press I to inset, and Alt E and extrude faces along normals like this. And now let's create a new material. I will leave the selection active here and change to something yellowish like this. And then in the middle, I will create a new material slot, new material, hit assign, and add some reddish color there. So there's detail. I will tab out now and press Alt D and X to move this on X-axis, and Alt D again and X to move to the other side. And I can look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad and move these on top of each other like this using Alt D, and then maybe make subtle movements on Y-axis and subtle rotations so it doesn't look so uniform. And now let's change the color for the plate to something warmer, maybe like this. Okay, and let's create another one. So I'll shift right click here, create a new plane again, tab into the edit mode, S to scale it up, and S then Y to scale on Y-axis, and then E to extrude. And now I'll tab out, shift right click here, and we'll create a nigiri right now. So let's press Shift A, add a plane, and again I will just tab in, scale it down, scale on X-axis, so S then X, and E to extrude. And I have a new object right there. Tab out, shift right click to move the cursor, and create a new one in absolutely the same way like this. And now I'll use that Ctrl R to create more cuts, and I will use mouse wheel to increase number of those cuts like this. And now I'll create a new material there and create like a salmon color. Now I'll go for face select and Alt click these two loops, and by holding Alt and Shift select the other one as well. Create the new material. We can assign the same one, duplicate it right here, that's the new thing, and assign, and now we can change the color to something different. We can tab out and have a look in the rendered preview, and of course I will change the plate color, maybe something like those chopsticks right here, and I can duplicate and change the shade a little bit. And now I can select this, press Alt D, Y, and just duplicate on the plate, and maybe now switch to median point and make some adjustments in rotation. Okay, finally some cup right here, so shift right click, and I will add a plane, tab into the edit mode, and just press E to extrude, I to inset, and E to extrude, and that's it. Basically that's all I need for a simple cup with this style. And let's create like a vessel for the soy sauce. So I will shift right click here, press Shift A, add a plane, make it smaller, and S then X to scale it on X-axis. And again, very simple, just use the inset and extrude. And here I'll create a new material, leave it white, and create a new material slot and create a dark material there and hit assign. So it looks like there's a soy sauce in there, and I will disable the X-ray view so it's cleaner. And right here I will shift right click, press Shift A, and create a wasabi. And again, this will be fairly simple, so let me scale this down in the edit mode. Press E to extrude, I to inset, and E to extrude again. And now we'll only add some fresh green color and maybe scale it down in the object mode. Now let me look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, and now I want to organize this a little bit better, so let me switch this to wireframe view, and let me select this and create like more even spacing between those. So I want this to be more evenly spaced here as well, so there's some kind of rhythm to the whole thing. Maybe this can be larger, closer here. Okay, and let's look from the camera, and of course the camera will need to go higher, so press G then Z and move it up like this. And now we can go back to the render preview and make this smaller. Okay, something like this, and maybe make this smaller as well. Okay, and now I can select the camera and move the whole thing so it kind of feels more balanced. And now, as you can see, this is completely different scene using the same techniques that you used to create the first set of sushi. So imagine how much powerful this can be when you really like lay out the whole world, whole city or something and create it using this style. You can create really colorful illustration, basically create your portfolio based only on this style and get clients, start your career using only this after 1 hour or 2 hours of learning. So that's it for these updates, but I have one more in my sleeve, and to adjust the lighting. Because right now with the sunlight, it looks nice with those sharp shadows and everything, but I want to see more gradients here. I want to see more warmer light, something that will strike me more visually and will not feel so flat and like vector painted, basically. So let's hold Shift S, reset the cursor to world origin, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a light, an area light. Now I'll press G then Z to move this up. And there's nothing to see here because it's really weak. Now the scene is quite large. I didn't want to mess up with any scaling or like units or meters or something. So this is large. This is like 8 meters if you used it in like game engine or something. But don't worry about that. Just keep in mind that you need to set up your lights according to your scene scale, at least the ones that have fall off, like the area light. So let's set this up to something like 1500. You can see this is looking much more different right now, and I think we'll need to go even more, but let's scale it up real nice so we have these nice soft shadows in addition to those sharp ones. And let's go something even stronger like 3000, and I will look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad and press G and move this slightly towards the back. So we get these nice reflections here in the scene, like this. And now I will make this warmer. And you can see how the scene reacts, and if you start moving it around, how it will create these different reflections. And here I can probably go really orange, and then we can compensate that using the world color. So that's another way how to add ambience, and I will just go ahead and add color to this. So not only lightness but color, and you can see how the color of the shadows changes. Before it was neutral, but now it goes more towards the violet, and you can ramp this up and really create this nice gradient between the warm and the cold color of the world light. And immediately this is much more visually striking. We can even darken the background a little bit, and then I will probably duplicate this in the back and create a closer light that will add more of the gradient in top. So I will probably make this a little bit more subtle, smaller and closer to the background, like this. Okay, and now the final adjustment when you are preparing your render, just go render settings, and down here there will be a color management window. And if you expand this, you can see view transform and look, which is kind of a contrast setting, and it's always great to play with these settings. So for example, AGX is a new one in Blender 4, but for this kind of illustration I really like filmic, so I will switch it to that, and you can see how the colors are a little bit more rich right now, even though less realistic maybe. And now for the look, you can change different contrast settings. So you can go medium, high contrast, so it kind of pops up more, but I think medium contrast will be fine here. And then you can play with the exposure. So if you feel like it's underlighted or too dark, you can try to compensate that with exposure, for example. And then on the background, I will go ahead and increase the roughness a little bit, so it's not that glossy, and maybe play with the distance of the main light here. And finally, when you want to render out your result, you can just go ahead in the rendering section and choose render and render image. Now, depending on your Blender setup, this will either appear here or it will open a new window, but it is the same thing. So whether it's in the new window or here in the viewport, After it's done, you can see it took only 6 seconds here. You can just go ahead, image, save as, and choose, for example, a PNG, find the folder you want to save it, save as image, and your illustration is ready in PNG.